Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Town of Pendleton June Planning Commission meeting. If I could please have a roll call to my left, Brad,
Brad Valentine.
Cheryl Rainey Hunt,
Kyle Icorn,
Tim Pritchard.
Carol Hannah, Jenny Sisson,
Andrew Holloway.
Thank you. We have a full quorum. If I could have the board to review the minutes submitted, and I'll ask for a motion for.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Carol. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor of approval of the minutes as submitted, please say aye. Those opposed, thank you. Having no old business, we'll move directly to new business. We have a request for zoning for heavy business to institutional 200 Enterprise Drive for a community health network.
All right, so I'll just introduce the project. This is a 10-acre parcel on Enterprise Drive, just north of Tractor Supply. It's currently zoned heavy business. It is vacant, so it's not being used for anything. And it's part of our southeast quadrant of the I-69 plan, which is the Pendleton Business Park area. So if you go to the next slide, just to refresh your memory on where that is located and the uses around it. There, this parcel. Next slide. So community health is looking to rezone from heavy business to institutional for a 2-story medical office building and clinic service building. It'll face Enterprise Drive. It sits kind of back on the property there. It is not going to be a hospital with emergency room services or overnight stays, or an outpatient type facility. And then there's also the possibility of some future development on the eastern side there. So that was just a real brief kind of introduction. So I'll let Tim Oakes answer any questions you might have, and then we'll move to analysis and public comment.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yes.
Good evening. For the record, Tim Oakes, Attorney Ice Miller, representing Community Health Networks. With me this evening is also Joe Slayton, who is the Director of Real Estate for Community Health Network. The proposed rezone is being done for the purpose of allowing a medical facility to be built on site. The intent is not to have inpatient beds where you have overnight stays. This would instead house doctors' offices and various practices, emergency medicine, imaging could be involved as well in certain practice groups. And the plan that you see on the screen right now is truly conceptual. I want to make sure everybody knows that it's subject to change. Community health is going through its design process right now, which is a pretty elaborate vetting process in terms of the project itself. So this is subject to change, but we think this is a great location. We think it would be a great asset to Pendleton. We look forward to moving forward, and we certainly would be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Conceptual, but we do anticipate the building being located approximately where it's at, and
Yeah,
the layout's approximately the same.
We do, mostly because that is going to be the most efficient use of the real estate. So, you know, the massing that you see in the bottom right corner is, you know, gives you an idea of the size of it, but you know, the exact shape that might change. It's, you know, but we would anticipate it be pretty similar to this, just because it's really probably the most efficient use of the site.
About how many square feet, you know,
It's the range.
on 2 floors? on two
Yep,
levels?
most likely 2 floors, yes.
Is that the first phase 1 of the build out? Is there
It-
an option to expand it into a second phase?
Yeah, so if you see the area to the north there is a, you know, if there was a demand, it could be expanded. Then the future pad site itself could also be utilized. We'll see how this goes, and you know, you don't want anybody to be ill or need medical care, but we all know that happens. And as the population in the area in Pendleton continues to grow, while these services are necessary.
Great asset.
How does this affect the community location that's out by Hunsinger Farms right now?
It's
There's a-
not, this is,
Isn't that a, is,
That's a community facility.
yeah,
this facility is not anticipated to impact any other existing community facilities. Those will remain. This is being built because we believe there's a need in this area. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you are affiliated with the office space 167. That community is the same?
I
Or
have
not?
to check on the, I guess that there is possibility of taking.
You mentioned emergency services possible, but you said that there would be no emergency room.
Like ready check. So, you've got,
So you're talking about urgent
you
care.
cut,
person
urgent
would be-
care, you get a cut, you need stitched
Right.
up, that kind of care, not surgical, not really anticipated surgical type care.
Trauma.
Not a level 1 or level 2 trauma or anything of that sort.
Have you done any detention analysis at this point, or is it too early?
The engineers are actually looking at that and are in discussions with the engineer for the town to make sure that gets taken care of. We're aware that extension of utilities and including drainage are critical to us.
We had a preliminary meeting about a month ago, so we got you on the agenda. There is a drain that comes through there, and goes back to Tractor Supply.
Yes,
It
it's
goes-
regional.
it goes
Yeah.
south.
Yep.
To there. Carol, you have any more questions?
well, what about traffic? That Enterprise Drive is kind of a busy. I mean, have you thought about any improvements or anything to the traffic to get to State Street there? Or do you feel like it's sufficient?
It is sufficient right now. I think as that entire business park continues to develop, everybody in the business park in the town will have to pay attention to that issue, certainly. But as of right now, we believe it's adequate.
You
Again,
think
in
people would go?
5 years from now,
Yeah.
we don't know. And certainly, Community Health Network would like to be part of any, solution that is necessary in the future. But right now, we think it's fine.
It seems like trying to filter people over to Heritage Way might be the best solution right now, but just how I see that.
Well,
You can't turn left when you
can't
get
turn
there.
left going north.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Remember in our meeting a month ago, I did make the comment that Tractor Supply's inbound traffic does sometimes back up there.
Yeah, we're aware of that, and one of the options that we'll be discussing is maybe having a moving or having a second entrance further north on Enterprise Drive to get away from that any potential backup.
So you're aware.
Thank you.
Do you know, on average, the traffic that goes in and out of med centers like this?
I'm not a traffic expert, but from my anecdotal evidence of years of working for health systems, I would say office parks, you have people coming and going. They stay longer. So when you have the parking demand, it's typically more intensive for these kind of uses, and that's following your ordinance. There is I would say, an increase in demand for the traffic in that regard, but it's marginal. It's not exponential. It's within a relative range that I don't feel. I've put medical places in full business parks that are all just administrative, and I would say the impact for the network was the same as if it wasn't a medical project. And the parking sometimes is a little bit, I would personally say, a light when it's an administrative business use, not a medical. You get people coming and going at different hours where when they're in an office, they're there all day. So it's just getting more use, but it's not more intensive that it can't handle that use, if that makes sense.
It's not all at one time.
It's not all at one
Yeah,
time.
people are-
And it has a tendency to spread the traffic out instead of like an office building really puts most of their traffic on the road system during the AM and PM peak hours. The facility like this spreads it out a little bit more, so the roads can more readily handle that.
Andrew?
Do you know, or do you have any idea of in like a 50,000 square foot building, how many different offices you could have as far as different like practitioners or something like that? Because that's one thing I'd be curious of with traffic and things. it was gonna
If
be
I
for
could answer
peds
that,
or-
I'd probably write a book that probably would make. It's a function of, which department has an interest there. Some departments, you don't need as many docks, but you need a bigger space. If it's an imaging, the equipment takes up a lot of space.
Is there anyone that has expressed interest? Do you know of? Have people?
Right
like,
now, it's all
types?
internal network
Okay.
departments right now.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from the audience? All right, hearing none.
All right, so function of planning staff was to analyze the petition against our comprehensive plan and other approved relevant plans and ordinances and any existing conditions or variances on the site, to present facts and analysis. So based on that analysis, staff has the following comments. The proposed rezone does fit the parcel size necessary, the amount of road frontage necessary and use requirements for institutional. It also fits in with the surrounding uses, the zoning designations around there, and the language in the I-69 plan for projected uses in that area. And as we kind of just discussed, the roadways appear to be efficient at this point in time to handle that kind of traffic in that area.
Again, remember, this is just a rezone for now. Then we'll come back. We'll make plot approval, landscape.
No, they won't. It'll be for site plan.
That's a site. Yeah.
Commercial, yes. So I'll just go through the plan.
So are we looking for a recommendation on this at this point?
Yes.
I'll make the motion that we provide a favorable approval. This rezoning.
Let's note that as PC 2023-1. Okay, thank you, Brad. Do I have a second?
I would second.
Thank you, Carol. All those in favor of rezoning 2023-1 from heavy business to institutional, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Welcome to town. Okay, second item on the agenda. Is request to rezone rural residential to heavy industrial, 8775 west, 700 south. Tom and Pamela Watson via Monarch Engineering and Starlight Leasing.
So this property is 8.8 acres and it is zoned rural residential. It's currently used as a farming field. And it's right here on the map, right next to the NG Voc Code development. If you remember, that came through last year for their rezone. Next slide, please. So the proposed rezone is from rural residential to heavy industrial for Blue Star Ready Mix Dry Batch Concrete Plant. The concept plan listed here shows two buildings. One's a maintenance and office building, and then the other is the dry batch plant. So the project includes not only those things, but exterior raw material storage, mixer truck parking, employee parking. And the site is estimated to go through about $6 million worth of building improvements, landscaping, and roadway, with the potential for up to 20 new employees. So the next slide has a few concept renderings of what the buildings will both look like. So this is the maintenance and office structure, and then the dry batch plant structure. So I will turn it over to Brian Mensch from Mensch Engineering, who's representing the petition.
Good evening. My name is Brian Munch, Munch Engineering, offices at 4,000 Clark Creek Road, Plainfield, Indiana. If you could go back one slide, please. I'd like to start there if I may. Come over here.
Sure. It's the yellow button.
With me in attendance tonight is Tim Eckert, representative from Blue Star Ready Mix, Starlight Leasing, and Weber Concrete. Give me a moment to introduce who those identities are, if I may. Weber Concrete is a residential concrete basement supplier, contractor in the Indianapolis surrounding community. It's a family-owned business. Mr. L.D. Weber started the business. His son now is currently operating the business upon L.D.'s passing. Weber Concrete, like I said, does residential basements. They've expanded into the concrete manufacturing realm, if you will. Started a business called Blue Star Ready Mix. The first Blue Star Ready Mix plant was constructed in 2005. So they've been around for a while, providing concrete, not only to themselves through the Weber Concrete basement business, but also to third-party customers. This would be the 5th plant that they will construct and operate if we're favorable in moving forward. Like Hannah mentioned, this site is very specific to us due to the proximity to State Road 13 and Interstate 69. Obviously, when we look at concrete batch plants, the availability to make quick and efficient deliveries is very critical to that process. This parcel, we feel, provides that with the access to Interstate 69 via State Road 13. As Hannah mentioned, or excuse me, as Hannah Rose mentioned, it's over a $6 million investment of real value with the equipment, improvements to the property, as well as some of the mobile equipment being proposed to operate this facility. And with that would come 20 new local jobs for this community. If I may talk a little bit more specifically about the site. This is County Road 7. So we are proposing 2 entryways into the property. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our material flow to begin with. As you can see, to the east side of the property is outdoor aggregate bins. So any raw aggregates will be delivered, placed in the specific bins. The mobile trucks that would go back out this entryway. Our concrete mixers would primarily use this entryway. Right now, we have allocation for 15 spaces of concrete mixer parking on property itself. We do have staging at this location. So as the trucks can return, we would stage. They would pull into the batch enclosure at this location, back out, rinse off, top off their water supply, then go back out this entryway. One thing I'd like to point out about this entire site that you see, it's all impervious surface. Obviously, going to be concrete. And moving forward, the location of these ancillary support items, we will require a propane tank farm. Obviously, in the wintertime, we will need hot water to batch our concrete. So we do have a propane tank farm. We have a small fuel island. We do have, like I mentioned, the concrete washout area. Occasionally, we do get concrete that returns in the truck itself. That concrete will be displaced at this location in a thin enough layer. And when I say thin enough layer, 3 to 4 inches, where a mobile loader or a wheel loader can come in and pop it up and make it into chunks. We will haul that off site to be crushed elsewhere. But it does give us an opportunity to have a confined area to discharge that material that does return with us. Drainage wise, we do have a set aside retention basin to the south side of the property. We have given care to locate the plant away from the public waterway as it makes sense while maintaining our truck staging area in this location. One thing that I also would like to point out, our dry powder as it comes in will come in this entryway back into an enclosure at this location. So while our powder transfers will be under roof and in a 3-walled canopy or doghouse, if you will, on the south side of the building. We do have a location for the employee parking, like Hannah Rose mentioned. We do have a maintenance shop. One thing I'd like to point out on the maintenance shop, we do have the frontage side with a small office building or a small office use. Then the doors to the maintenance shop itself point to the south, away from the public view. as you can see on this site plan, we do have quite a bit of landscaping and mounding for screening purposes. We're all very conscious of the landscaping ordinance. There is a residential property that will maintain that status at this location. As you can see, we do have the mounding and the landscaping accordingly. We have some landscaping in front of our maintenance shop as well. The location of the county obviously does not allow for connection to public utilities at this point in time. So we are proposing a on-site commercial well for our concrete mixing. Then we do have on-site septic location up toward the right of way. Obviously, with that being a grassy area, we feel that's an appropriate location for that. If you go to the next slide, please. I'm gonna focus on the concrete batch enclosure to begin with, if you will. If you recall from the site plan, we had our aggregate storage bins out to this location. We had a conveyor that brings material inside our building itself. That conveyor is covered. So once the material is loaded into an exterior hopper discharge, it's on a covered conveyor into the building. We do have hoppers inside the facility at this location that we would weigh batch out of, depending on what that concrete batch would be. So we do have interior hoppers, depending on what the aggregate is and or what the weights may be, they'd be dispensed from here. At this location, we do have 2 silos. We're being very conscious of the height restrictions, some of the height requirements of the community. As you can see, we do have a roof where some of these silos would be extended above the roof line. We feel it's important to have as much dry powder storage on site as possible. Therefore, we went to a larger silo at this location. The reason being is, if you paid attention to the news at all over the last year or so, there's been a huge supply demand for dry powder. We also feel by having extra storage on site, exceeding the 50 or the 60-foot limitation of height, by having this taller silo, it does allow us maybe to reduce the frequency of deliveries to this property, depending on what the demands are for our concrete deliveries. And it's kind of hard to see, but this is the doorway that the trucks would pull in to load inside. So you can see the nose of the truck will be inside underneath that location right there. The reason I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that specific area of the enclosure itself, right above where the truck is sitting to be loaded, we do have a dust collection system. So this particular plant site is what we call a dry mix facility. What that means is the dry products, aggregate, sands, powder, and then water is added into the truck. The truck becomes the mixing operation as it moves down the roadway. So with this being inside and having that dust collection system directly above our loading zone, if you will, any residual dust that would result of material going from the conveyor through the weigh batcher into the truck itself is being collected through a dust collection system. And I'll spend a little bit more time on that in a second. That holds true for the aggregate as well as for the dry powder material that's loaded into the truck itself. And obviously, once the water is added into, we start our mixing process, the dust is eliminated at that point. This particular dust collection system is state of the art. Above the truck hopper itself, these are all front load trucks. Above that hopper is approximately a 48 square foot area, something that's 8 by 6, that we're pulling near 6,000 cubic feet per minute of air through into a baghouse or a dust collection system that consists of cartridges. And we have close to 980 square feet of filtering capacity in our dust collection system to collect that dust as it pulls that air in. In this particular system, as those filters start to clog, we can reverse flow those, that powder drops out, and then gets reintroduced into the silos itself. So it is a closed system from the standpoint of, we pull dust in, it goes through a 980 square feet of filtration, clean air comes out, and that will be discharged through the roof of this system. So it'll be discharged upward. As those filters start to clog, a lot of the systems you have to manually pull those filters out and clean them. This particular system, you do not. We can reverse airflow. That powder reverses out of the filter, drops into a hopper underneath. We then can pneumatically transfer those back up to the top of the silos. So we feel very confident that our dust control at this location being inside of an enclosure with this elaborate dust collection system directly above, moving through close to 6,000 cubic feet per minute of air. And what that translates to about 122, 123 feet per minute of air volume being pulled up. We can control our dust inside. One thing the owner to be very conscious of the community and our surrounding neighbors. To the south side of the building I pointed out earlier, we do have the capability to back our over the road semi-trailers into a canopy 3-sided enclosure. So again, that pneumatic transfer of dry powder up into the silos is done inside a controlled environment. And it's been consciously designed to where the opening is on the east side of the building, away from any prevailing winds that would be coming from this direction into the facility itself. Likewise, this opening with the trucks pulling in, with the prevailing winds would be blowing any air into the facility versus out of the facility. Again, prevailing winds, being conscious that we do get differing wind movements around these open areas. There is a office area, break room area inside the facility. We do have the capability to store our mobile equipment inside as well. So it's not always sitting out. Then this side of the building, which is this component here, is where we keep our admixtures, our air compressors for pneumatic transfers, hot water heaters, those type of items. One thing that I would like to point out, and I failed to mention on the site plan itself, so if we can go back one slide real quick. It's important to us that as material goes from these aggregate bins into these hoppers and get loaded inside the building, that material has some kind of moisture content, especially in the summertime. But what we've learned is this material sits outside, it heats up. You know, if you have a stone or a piece of gravel, it will retain that heat from the solar radiation. We will have a dedicated water source at this aggregate outdoor storage, this aggregate bin, to not only help control dust, but to keep that temperature buildup on this material down as much as possible. And like I mentioned, once it goes into these hoppers, it gets conveyed into the building via a covered conveyor going inside. So as that material comes inside, it will be moist, will have some moisture content to it. The maintenance shop, as I mentioned, these doors will be facing to the south. We do have a appendage off the front of the building that will have an office, break room, bathroom type facility in it for the maintenance personnel on site. If we can move forward. The petitioner, Blue Star Ready Mix, obviously is very conscious of the community here in Pendleton. So they have put some self-imposed commitments in place. And I'm sure Hannah Rose is going to get to this. I'll steal a thunder a little bit. Obviously, this is a very quaint community. You guys are very conscientious of your downtown area. We're here to make a commitment today that our trucks will not go through downtown. That's the raw material being delivered to the property, aggregates, powders, as well as our concrete mixers driving through town. Caveat that is, if somebody downtown area orders some concrete, we'll have to bring some concrete. But our truck traffic will be directed outside the town limits. They will not be coming through town. We also are very conscious of Sundays and major holidays, so we will not be having any operations on those days. I mentioned earlier that any residual concrete that returns in the trucks will be sheet spread onto the impervious surface, busted up, and then taken off site to be disposed of or crushed properly. We will keep our noise limits down to 65 decibels or less at the property line. And kind of put that in the equation. 65 decibels is what I'm doing right now in talking to you. So it's normal conversation at our property lines. And we feel we can control that not only with our enclosure and being able to soundproof some of those items within our enclosure, but also some of the heavy landscaping, mounting, so on and so forth that we've presented in our site plan. We're very conscious that 700 North is a rural county road at this point in time. With the amount of truck traffic we will be using, or the increase in truck traffic that we will be introducing to County Road 700, we are committed to rebuilding that to an industrial heavy duty type roadway from our easternmost entrance through State Road 13. Then we are here to make a commitment today that once public utilities are available in our area, we will be connecting to those public utilities. I think in the packet that you were were provided. There are some letters of recommendation or some letters of support. I think those letters of support speak very highly of the family-owned business. Jeff Weber and his group. Personal note on my behalf, I've been working with the Weber family since 2004. I've never had a signed contract. Everything we've done has always been on a handshake, and they've been very, their integrity on their word has been the utmost. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Question about the noise. So you talked about leftover concrete being poured no more than 3 to 4 inches. That one. So how, and then you said we might break it up and we'll take it to crush it.
Correct.
So tell me how you're doing that and how you're controlling the noise. Is it just within the structure itself?
Yeah,
that
so
it doesn't.
maybe we'll go back to that second. And I apologize for bouncing around. So we do get, I mean, and if you're familiar with the construction industry at all, we'll go back to this. If you're familiar with the construction industry at all, somebody will order concrete and they'll order 5+ yards. They may use 4. So when that concrete comes back, the truck will shoot that out at this location. So again, you have mobile equipment, you have a diesel engine that's operating, that's dropping that onto the ground at this location. After that sits for a day or two, it starts to dry out, starts to cure. Then we'll bring our mobile loader over and pop that there and basically load it up into a dump truck to haul it away. So it's some of our other facilities that we have, specifically the one in Noblesville and the one down in the Waverly area, we do that crushing on site. Those are more in an industrial area of the community, more of a, as an example, one in Waverly is associated to a gravel extraction business, where it's 300 some acres around us. But I will, with this operation being inside, majority of the dust collection, pneumatic transfers being inside a building where we control the noise with sound dampening type items. We will have mobile equipment outside operating. We will have a wheel loader that will be moving material from this bin into these hoppers, and it'll be your normal type equipment at that point in time. Obviously, no more than what's the farming operations currently are in that area. The one caveat to that is, in full disclosure, by OSHA standards, and we can't do anything about it, there are backup alarms on those items that you'll hear that beeping sound. That's the nature of our business.
What is to the south of the property right now?
Right now, it's farm field agriculture.
Farmland?
Ag all with interstate.
Okay.
So I think the UDO requires a type 1 buffer against commercial and ag. So that the site plan doesn't look like it reflects a buffer around the west and south and east boundaries. Is that something that will be reviewed by staff during plan review?
Yeah, I mean, your site plan will make sure all of the boxes are checked. But I believe that there's detention, so depending on how big it is, it doesn't need. But all of that will get taken care of.
And where's the stormwater discharge? Is there, it looks like it's all ag field. Have you determined that?
There is an easement. Maybe if you go back to that area photograph quick, I can kind of talk through this. Go to the top, please. Yeah, oh, there you go. There is an easement that Indy Boat Company has procured from the Riffy family that goes from basically this location all the way over to Interstate 69. That is a non-exclusive easement, so we can discharge through that easement as well. That's why our pond is located on the south side of property. However, right now we are in negotiations with Indy Boat Company to do a combined storm outlet from their detention basin, which is in this location, our detention basin in this location, so we have one pipe running to the south. But my understanding is that is being negotiated between the attorneys, which is above my pay grade. And it is also being considered by the Madison County Drainage Board. So that is something that's ongoing at this point in time. Obviously, if we're very fortunate to move forward with a favorable recommendation and approval to the town council, those level of details will be flushed out a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficient.
So would this come before BZA for a variance for this
For the
public utilities?
equipment.
Public utilities are required for heavy industrial.
With the commitment to attach to public utilities once they're available.
Yeah.
Was-
That
Without a
satisfies that requirement? I mean, where's the closest water and sewer?
Sewer is only on 13, they're farther than 300 feet away.
Correct.
So they're not required to hook up. You can, I'm on Fall Creek Sport as well.
Yeah.
You can hook up to the sewer if you want. We'd run a line over there, but.
I mean, the existing owner isn't required, but you're
No.
developing heavy industrial. so.
And typically for our concrete batch plants, our waste load is very, very minimal. It's employee waste load, what it boils down to. We don't have any heavy discharges from our plants. The water usage is our biggest user. And obviously gas for heating of the material in the wintertime. So we have investigated very preliminarily into 38 and State Road 13 seems to be the water supply with Ingalls. And I believe they are open to a cross agreement between themselves and the town of Pendleton if we choose to go that route. But that's a cost or an analysis we have not done at this point in time. You know, right now we are hopeful that we can find a sufficient water source on property to satisfy our needs.
There's
We did the
water
same
along
kind of-
13 and water along 38.
Yeah,
Correct.
we did the same kind of thing with the utilities program. So far away from our utilities right now. It's unrealistic to.
How many trucks approximately a day do you think would be going in and out?
I will give you a range.
Yeah.
How about at full capacity?
And I'll speak to full capacity. We expect aggregate deliveries to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 trucks a day, 10 to 15. And the other thing, keep in mind, this is seasonal, right? Obviously during the winter months, the late fall months, we're not as busy. Over the road tanker trucks, 1 to 2, up to maybe 4. Cement mixers coming in out of the property. We will have 15 trucks staged here at full capacity. So that could be as up to 60 to 70 trucks in and out a day. It is a heavy truck use. We're conscious of that heavy truck use. That's why we're making the commitment to work from here over to there on making that road appropriate for that use. And obviously, once we're on State Road 13, that is already to NDOT standards. 69 is obviously NDOT standards. But we are conscious of our heavy truck traffic. That's why we are committing to doing that roadway.
The competition to the west of the same. That plan.
I know we've talked or looked at that 700 South as possibly turning into a bigger gateway to Pendleton, being 146th Street extension. So I'm just wondering visually what that would look like. Do you have pictures of other facilities that I can get a better view of what that actually
What our plant looks like.
Yeah.
The closest that we have in our portfolio would be in the Fairland, Interstate 74 in Fairland. That's the most recent plant that we've designed and installed and is in operation. That one's also fully enclosed. Very similar, like I just described, in this plant where we have outdoor aggregate storage.
Mhm.
It's covered, conveyed into a building, then dispatched from there. That is the closest that we would have. If you go forward a couple, and we were conscious of what it may look like.
Mhm.
So, thank you. As you can see, we have natural light translucent panels located on our property. We are proposing a 4-foot tall concrete decorative, potentially decorative wainscot around the outside to help break up this facade. So when you look at this facility, you will see some architectural features included in, the wainscot, the translucent panels into the facility itself. But it's an industrial build. That's why when we looked at laying out the site like we have, we kept this apparatus or this structure to the south. Not necessarily to screen it, but we did purposely keep it off the right of way, County Road 700 South, and put this building closer to that right of way, which has more of a front pleasing type facade.
That office feature as it goes through building permit.
With, you know,
It'll probably have to have some changes done to it to bring it up to, it would just be that front facade would be what would be decorative.
and maybe that truck traffic is of more concern if that develops into a thoroughfare, more of a higher traffic.
It's Lapel on the north side, right?
That
So
was
it's
all along the north. It closes
Across the
7
street is
Yeah.
Angles
Yeah,
to the
but we've
south.
talked about 146, being an alternative way to get into town. On the thoroughfare.
Is 700 just a collector and a
It's
thoroughfare?
not even a collector, it's just a local.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you say improve to industrial standards, that's like 2 12-foot lanes.
It'll probably be like a little bit larger than a local designation, but it'll be built heavier. Because the only
Did-
traffic,
Did the boat company dedicate right away?
we're almost there. Yeah.
So all those improvements will be done on the south side of the road?
Correct.
So we're here today to talk about rezoning, but the suggested variance there for the height of the building will go where?
BZA.
What is the current limitation for heavy industry on vertical height?
55, 60.
I think it's 60.
We're going 82 on the silos,
That's correct.
8111.
Correct. And we very easily could extend our roof up to that elevation. However, we feel this is more aesthetically pleasing. It does create some challenges from my perspective, from an engineering perspective, to seal around those. But we feel that this is more of an aesthetically pleasing appearance than having a 80-foot tall building that's 50 by 50, if you will.
So the homeowners you've encased there, you got an option to buy them or talk to them or?
We are in negotiations that at their time of willingness to sell. And
Are they
or
here tonight?
their willingness to sell, we are in negotiation, first right of refusal, if not a signed purchase agreement prior to that. Yes, we are in those discussions.
So for your deliveries, how do they come in? Because I know there's always times when they're overfilled, you have rocks coming off. I'm assuming you've had issues like this at other sites.
We have, and I shouldn't say issues necessarily, like I mentioned, our first concrete batch plant was in 2005. And with your first of anything, there's a learning curve that goes with that. We do rely upon third-party vendors to help with some of our deliveries, primarily the aggregates, the sand and the gravels and the stones to come to us. We are very conscious that as those trucks travel down the road, they are covered based on, NDOT standards, NDOT requirements. We do have sufficient space as those trucks empty out into their aggregate bins as they drive back around to the improved County Road 700 South, that any residual material will bounce off along that drive, if you will. So we don't anticipate anything to be carried from our site out into the public right of way post delivery, if you will. Inbound material, obviously, at that point in time, it's traveled a distance to get to us. And like I mentioned, those loads will be covered. Dry powder obviously comes in a semi-trailer that's enclosed. And it's basically semi-trailers where we see the kind of hoppers with the underlying tubing or piping that we use for pneumatic transfers. It is critical for us also that we have the two entrances, so we can keep the aggregates separated and keep the cross traffic flows more efficient on property.
So when there's been complaints, do communities contact you as
That's
been
correct.
the liaison to discuss with the various contracts?
Yeah,
that you have with
and
people?
that's Jeff Weber, who's the majority owner of Blue Star Ready Mix, Weber Concrete, Starlight Leasing. He is a very hands-on, active employee of the business, as well as a leader of the business. And if Jeff was standing here right now, he'd say the same thing I'm getting ready to say, please call me. Right? He is very much the one that would take a phone call, would meet with you, and reduce, eliminate, address your concerns straightforward to move forward. So in the past, if there has been a complaint, Jeff has dealt with those directly and handled them accordingly. And that could be not only in a one-off, that could be policy changings across the company.
Thank you.
Would the washout area be handled very similarly to the other concrete section where you'd be leftover concrete?
So the washout area is a little bit different. So if you can go to. the
I know there's pretty strict rules on that with like,
There is.
with violations and things.
So the washout area is designed as a 3-bay system.
Okay.
And it's kind of hard to tell from this schematic, but I'll try to explain it. So this center area that you see right there
Mhm.
is where the truck would nose up onto to wash off.
Okay.
Right? Bay 1 is here on either side. And what that allows us to do, any of the heavy residuals that may wash off the truck at that point in time gets collected in the first bay. That bay has access where we can get mobile equipment into to remove any of that material. And the reason we have 2 is if this is the active side, we let this side dry, for lack of better terminology. Any residual water as this fills up goes into bay 2, then bay 3. So it's kind of a 3-chamber system. As we get to chamber 3, water gets clear and a lot of the heavy sediment and or residual slurry is removed from it. Then we do have the capability to pull from residual, or excuse me, bay 3 accordingly if we need for residual water back into the plant and or we could haul off property to legally dispose of it. But the trucks would nose up onto a concrete, a sloped concrete surface that would direct the water to the 3 beds.
So did you say all of the surfaces were gonna be paved,
Going to be concrete.
concrete?
Yeah, we don't like that paper.
Okay, sorry.
White,
Oh,
white stuff. White,
And they're gonna get it from another company.
maybe.
And to be honest with you, this goes to the integrity of the Weber family. It is not uncommon to see another company's truck being loaded in our facility. We do have joint discussions with people like IMI, depending on if they have a high demand job, we may batch them out of our plant. So, and that's a little bit atypical in the concrete world. I mean, you don't usually see that among competitors, but that's the type of family that this is.
There are sidewalks across the north side of the property.
There is.
On the diagram. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Questions or comments from the audience? Sir, could you please come to the podium? Please state your name and your address, please.
Tim Paul, 222 Lucky Lane, Pendleton. I was just wondering how many silos there were.
2 silos.
What would you do if you had to limit the height to 60 feet?
Sure.
Obviously, the reduction to height to 60 feet reduces how much powder we have on property. That reduction in powder on property translates to more trucks coming in and out of the property. So if we were asked to reduce height to 60 feet, the full expectation should be whoever asked that question, you have more truck traffic coming out of this property. You know, this plant site and the design of this plant site is such that it generates X amount of yards of concrete per day, right? And there's a business cycle that goes with that. So we're very conscious of trying to balance that fine line between material on site, reduction in material on site with that reduction of deliveries versus minimal material on site, more deliveries. That's why as you see these aggregate bins are sized as such that they're approximately 75-foot depth or about 75-foot depth because of that raw material. We're trying to balance that. Do I want more truck traffic up and down the road more frequently? Or do I want to keep that material on site where I have control of it, as well as it allows me to keep an inventory and maybe reduce that trucks coming out of the property.
So with the volume reduction, if you were to go from 82 feet down to 60, what reduction in the overall dry powder capacity does that provide for you? And how
It-
is that translated into additional truck traffic?
Spitballing this, right? I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it'd be about a 30 to 35% reduction in powder on property, maybe pushing 40. And you went from 4 trucks a day to 8 to 10 trucks a day. So you're basically doubling the amount of truck traffic in and out of the dry powder truck traffic in and out of this facility.
Is the facility custom fabricated for you? Like the tank, I mean,
The manufacturer of the facility itself is a company called Conoco. They are a well-respected identity within the concrete industry. Is this plant customized to us? Not necessarily.
I'm just saying you could just increase the diameter of the tank.
Or a third tank.
I mean, and the limit's 55, not 60.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, could you just increase the diameter of the tank and keep it at the,
Like I mentioned, this is not necessarily a custom plant. This is their selection of tank sizes. The issue of adding a third tank, especially if you go shorter and you do try to go squattier, if you will, is the transfer, because we rely upon gravity to move that material from above down into the truck itself. So that discharge location is approximately 14 to 14 foot 6 inches above finished concrete elevation or finished floor elevation. So we have to maintain that height. And the time you get your pneumatic transport from above down, the conical shoot in, you really start reducing down and making that transfer from a silo over here to fill a truck over here becomes very, very difficult.
so I guess an approval tonight wouldn't guarantee the variance be approved, so.
Yeah, and this is our strategy of ours that we wanted to come before this group tonight to talk about the zoning side of it. And we didn't just want to get the cart in front of the horse, if you will, and start pursuing variances.
And then another concern I have is if we would approve the zoning change and the project wouldn't work out for some reason, we have now property that's zoned heavy industrial, which is.
I don't think we have, but that's what I was thinking. If this doesn't go through, then it automatically reverts back.
Hey,
Because
Jeff,
we want to vet every or
Right.
every building
yeah,
that
Jeff,
gets built.
have we ever done a callback clause on a rezone that doesn't continue being built?
You could, and it could also be done in terms of commitments that it would have to be, the petitioner can make commitments that it has to be this or nothing. And that would address the concern about, it's a free for all. Anyone could come in with a project that fits the zoning code. There's
Should
a
we
couple ways to.
have it Where if this project doesn't get built, it gets zoned back to rural residential instead?
That would require the town to file a petition to rezone it back to its current zoning classification.
Okay.
So we would just limit it to this particular
This
use.
Right, but it would keep it heavy industrial.
Correct, and that it's almost like a roundabout PUD in that way. It has to be as presented or not at all. And then then it's going to be very unattractive to additional development. And at that point, the town can come in and rezone it as a what it is today.
Right.
So it would stay heavy industrial
With the use limited to this.
to this,
To this.
So
Gotcha.
if this
falls
project,
through,
yeah.
then we'll petition, we'll put it back to you as.
The concern's a good one if you would pass it. Okay, yes, we heavy industrial and then, clean your hands and move on. Then that concern is very good. So the things that you guys have mentioned is possible, with the use and commitments made by the petitioner, which are even stronger. That would alleviate that concern.
But how do we have commitments with rezoning
Commitments and
to
conditions.
the zone? Okay.
Yeah, we've always been on.
Put
Okay.
commitments on it before.
Okay. Mhm.
What's your, I know you're itching to get up there.
Yeah.
Hello, Mike Liotti with Indy Boat Co. at 9175 East 146th Street, Noblesville. My father Dan here.
Dan Liotti, same address.
We, as you guys may remember, recently purchased a property to the west here where we plan on building. We are well underway of the storage facilities that we use only as employees, mostly in the spring and the fall for storing our customer boats, kind of a valet service. But with all intention of building a very high-end boat dealership just to the west on 13 there. And so with that, our average boats are $100,000 to $200,000 boats. And while I really support small business, heck, my dad built my grandpa's up, and then he kind of helped supported me doing this one that we took over 2 years ago. Very familiar with concrete, underground tunneling and everything. I am very concerned about the dust production here. The farm fields was one that I thought we could get around as it starts to build around. But just being around concrete, I know the prevailing winds come from the northwest, but those are always moving. A lot of fine particulate. The aggregate bins, while they are further to the east, that's a lot of material coming in. A lot of third-party vendors that you can never, from my construction background, control. And I understand that they want to make commitments to us. I'll just say I am second guessing building our dealership if something like this gets built. I deal with.
Stephanie, can you go back up a slide that shows the actual, the aerial, the land? I think it'll encompass their property as well.
Yeah.
Purple.
Yeah.
Our mouse is.
I run out of battery.
So yeah, like the right half pretty much are the storage buildings that we're about to break ground any day now. The west half would be the dealership.
Yes, these are the storage units.
I even right now at 146 and 37, couple blocks from the 37 construction, these customers spend a lot of money. Their second biggest investment on these, believe it or not, up to $400,000 boats. I deal with a lot of complaints about dirt and traffic and construction. I just don't know if it would be worth the investment with the traffic coming in and the dust and the dirt to be that. I support their small business and appreciate them coming to talk to us the other day, but very just concerned.
I'd like to add a little bit that, tremendous amount of construction. You got concrete trucks running, you got big semis with cement tankers, you got dump trucks with aggregate. So you talk about a lot of traffic turning right on the 700, which could be as this grows, everything's moving to the north. I know there's not 700 go straight to Pendleton, but it's going to be a nice gateway. People are going to be heading that direction, and definitely concerned.
With that concern, across to the west, there's a Don Smocks auction, which is all stone, an existing concrete plant now. Is there anybody here residential that has complaints or questions or comments about that current dust facilities? Mr. Ribbon? No? Okay, fine. I mean, it is an agricultural area. You're surrounded by farm fields. You do get dust from farm fields continually blowing. I think they're doing all they can to control their dust with the closed.
Do you have a considerable amount of storage in the dealership?
In the summertime, say the past month, there is a lot of boats that are dropped off for a day or two and then picked up. They're not always going inside, and so we would have kind of behind our building in the fenced in area, maybe a couple dozen boats, which would be how.
So plus the new boats that come in different manufacturers.
New inventory usually.
But you'll have a showroom.
Correct. We plan on a large indoor showroom and maybe pulling a couple out in the day
So at your other locations, how do you deal with dirt in the
Um,
air? dust?
Currently, we utilize some other facilities. Kind of we're in a tight location there, but we have some property to a mile north of us that we do a kind of a lot of pulling back and forth, bringing customers to this new kind of our secondary showroom, we just call it now. Yeah, because detailing a boat takes about a day, and it only takes a day or two to do that. And we're aware of the farm field, but I plan on being in this business for many decades, and why we are attracted to this area is seeing all the talk that it's getting and what it's going to become. So I think in 10 years it's going to look a lot different than a bunch of farm fields. And I can see that auction that property being purchased. So
What's the comp plan show for this parcel?
This whole corridor, from 13 to 675 is planned business.
So no industrial.
You know, I'm having
The
trouble.
heavier
you
use,
know.
Where is our industrial plant?
there was, well, 20. There was considerable amount of business park, so the southeast quadrant, and kind of a few other places.
I'm having trouble picturing heavy industrial, even for what might end up being attractive around it, then that limits any growth.
Well, I'm concerned about an 82-foot tall tower. Yeah, gateway.
Any other comments? Questions?
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
For the, go ahead, Steph, with an online question.
Somebody's asking about
To answer that question, we will have a secure site, obviously. So there'll be gates, they'll be removed from the roadways so we can get our trucks off the roadways prior to unlocking the gates in the morning or at evening. But we are very conscious of having a secure area.
the other question.
And I don't think I can answer that. I mean, obviously, we're at base one or stage one, if you will. And let me talk a little bit more about.
I think it obviously be towards the end after you got your plant constructed, you want to tear up the road.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it would, in our phasing, it would be one of the last activities that we would do. Prior to, obviously we wouldn't build a day one, start moving our equipment into port. A couple things, there is industrial already in this area. There is a scrap yard not too far to the south from here, Nuco. We do quite a bit with the scrap business itself, and we know how dirty they can be. So there is some industrial. Mr. Pritchard addressed the auction place to the west where it's all stone itself. There is a concrete batch plant to the northwest that's already in existence. I know the comp plan shows planned business in this area. However, you go 30 feet north of this property, on the other side of 7 or South, you're now in the Lapel. Typically at these type of intersections where you have two major state roads or an interstate road, you see a lot of heavy development. Could be warehouse space. I can point to Interstate 70 and State Road 39 in Henry County. If you go to that intersection right now, you have an auctioneer or an auction place that's all on stone. You have large warehouses. You have a lot of heavy truck traffic. So typically when you see a state road interstate type intersection, you'll see heavy type industrial developments. Not necessarily, retail space, but heavy industrial, because of you want those heavy trucks on the state roads. You want those heavy trucks on that interstate itself. In regards to the turning movements onto State Road 13, obviously as we move forward with, if we're favorable moving forward with our project, that will require discussions with NDOT, right? NDOT will tell us how to design that intersection at State Road 13 at 700 South. And if there's a specific turn, and more than likely we'll have to do a traffic study, which will tell us about our turning movements. That intersection will be designed accordingly to accommodate those turns in onto or out of that local road or improved group.
Comment as well, our last petitioner, we have the LKQ car recycling facility located just north of there. They're gonna locate just north of there. They're gonna locate between there, 3813, or south 38.
Did anyone ask what your hours of operation were? I can't remember.
Hours of operation typically is sun up to sundown. However, it is not common, but not unusual for us if a client would call up and say, it's going to be 100 degrees out today, we want to start our pour at 2 a.m., then we would start batching at 2 a.m. So normally, sun up to sundown is normal concrete. And like I mentioned, Weber Concrete or Weber Residential Basements will be the primary user of this facility. And they are a set up to sundown type user. But like any other business, if you have the opportunity to sell, you'll sell accordingly. But it's not an everyday occurrence. We are not a 24-hour a day operation.
What kind of site lighting do you have on the buildings and on the ground?
What we would anticipate from site lighting would be building mounted type lights. Obviously, when I say building type lights, we're not going to be mounting them at 60 feet up in the air necessarily. They'll be for doorways and provide a small level of security on property. But it will not be, since we are not a 24-hour operation, we will not rely upon heavy lighting to do our daily use. The other thing that when we do look at site lighting, where we do have our heavy use inside the facility, we can light that up as bright as we would like. So we anticipate site lighting to be more lights above doorways shining down. Maybe some lighting in the staging area of the trucks, but it will not be more than a 20 to 25 foot tall pole, if that. And that would be all directed inward into our property.
Yeah, it has to be downcast and shielded.
Yep.
Any comments or questions, sir?
Reese Axel Adams, 5817 Douglas Way. You mentioned it'll be adding about 20 jobs. I'm wondering if you could speak on the salary and if they would be union jobs or not.
No union. The Weber family is like I said, family-owned business. So we are not a union type operation. So it would be a open shop. Right now, salary wise, let me talk about the positions that we anticipate on the property itself. Obviously, we'll have a plant manager. Is in that $100,000 type range salary wise. We'll have a mobile wheel operator or a mobile equipment operator on site. Again, 60, 70,000. Our drivers in that $60,000, $70,000 range. So these are not necessarily white collar type jobs, if you will, doctors, lawyers, those type of people, but they are everyday folk, right? That need employment, and we anticipate to do that. So out of those 20 employees that we anticipate, majority of those will be blue collar type jobs, hourly type jobs with the opportunity to make overtime pay.
Any other questions or comments from anybody in the audience, sir?
Just another follow-up with the jobs. Do you plan on sourcing the jobs from the town of Pendleton or bringing in people from out of town to fill those jobs?
I don't know if everybody heard that answer, but obviously we have proven track record of hiring local. I don't think we would limit it to the town of Pendleton necessarily, but I think we look across the board of Madison County is where our source of employment would be. Again, it's a $6 million investment. We don't take these things very lightly. The tax revenue that'll be generated from this type of development for the town of Pendleton itself, we feel will be a very good. We feel we would be a good community member. We hopefully showed our integrity by some of the self commitments we made and moving forward. And again, this is step one. There's still a lot of steps for us to go through, albeit variances, albeit site plan approvals. But we were hopeful that we can move forward along that journey.
Would you like to move on to that analysis or?
Sure. I don't think I'm next. Is there any more comments, questions from the audience tonight? Anybody online?
I just real quick in closing. I apologize. I really bad. Obviously, there's been a lot of feedback tonight. There's some things that we could take away from this discussion that we could consider in moving forward. But I want to reiterate, this plant is pushing state of the art. We talk about dust, where we're putting in a dust system that moves a great significant volume of air. 6,000, nearly 6,000 cubic feet of air per minute is a great volume. We are going over and above by putting this facility inside of an enclosure to do our operations inside, primarily to control nuances such as dust, such as noise, because we do want to be the good neighbor. We're doing the new item for this particular site is we're doing our powder transfers inside. So, this is plant number 5 that we've worked with and we've designed, installed, and operated. And we're learning on the way. So we feel that the plant that we're presenting tonight, or the potential plant that we're presenting tonight, if we are favorable moving forward along this journey, is the best we got.
And staff findings?
Yeah, again, so planning staff's job is to analyze the petition against our relevant codes. So we have the following comments based on that analysis. This zoning does fit the parcel size requirements and the frontage requirements. And as Brian stated, the public utilities will be tapped, which is water, when those become available. The rezone is near State Route 13 and has easy access to I-69. The upcoming uses around the area are commercial, as we kind of discussed earlier. The comp plan has that whole corridor as a planned business area. Most of the heavy equipment is enclosed. The dust collection systems are proposed. I would suggest having that be a commitment, even though it seems like it might be standard practice having the top tier dust collection system as far as the commitments on the petition. And then lastly, the owner of the residential home that will be kind of enclosed within this plant area has offered a letter of support that's in your deed drive. So that's all of staff's comments. So you can vote, favorable, unfavorable, with or without conditions. Or
Is the house that is being surrounded the same owner as this property?
yes.
I will make a recommendation that we continue this based on some questions that need to be answered, I think, from both staff and the concrete people as well. One, I'd like to address the dust collection system. Is obviously a major concern. A little more detail on that dust collection system, if you would, for us. It does appear to be a state-of-the-art facility. It's a great looking building and site. I do have some concerns about the dust that's going to be generated in the parking areas, as far as the trucks coming in and out, grinding and turning and such. I've been in construction my whole life, so there is dust there. Obviously, there is dust in the fields and dust to your neighbors to the west, but we will be contributing to that. Particularly the silo height. I think we need to look at that to make sure it's 55, what we want on our end. Is there an alternative on your end? If not, that's fine, but look at it and see. It's a third silo, a stumpier silo, etc. I know power is a problem. I was involved in that last year. Big problems, probably gonna be another big problem this year as well. Also, as far as the buffers go for heavy industrial from that adjoining ag, but would like that addressed also on both sides, from staff and from you
And the
folks.
boat,
That being both the south side and the
Yes,
east side,
yes.
which were not addressed in the preliminary site plan.
Well, the adjacency to businesses a buffer.
Right.
yeah.
Uh, that might even, you'd have some type of just a preliminary drawing of what you would propose as far as your buffering on your three sides. I'd almost anticipate you're gonna own the house before the plant's built. Something to be done there, so.
Question for Hannah, what is the tallest structure that we have in the current town of Pendleton service area?
I'd say it's Tractor Supply.
Do you know what that vertical height is?
If you have anything else visually, yeah, just to, like you said, in Fairland, maybe something that would just give us something more to visually picture what that might look like.
We can definitely provide some information from our Fairland facility.
Mhm.
And with maybe some more time. More of a rendering. Might stand out in the public
Be
eye,
great.
what it might look like.
That would be
Great.
very,
So there's some artistic clear with.
Be great, thank you.
and especially with buffering, especially against property that's the boat.
Even if I may, if I could address that. Obviously, your landscape ordinance is very detailed and very black and white. I think in this particular case, if we may have the liberties, if it's the board's liberty to allow us to move forward, we would like to go maybe more of a heavier evergreen type look along especially along our west property line. Primarily because the evergreens give us a denser foliage, if you will, compared to a hardwood tree. So as an example, I know the ordinance requires, a tree X amount of feet, supplemented bushes, so on and so forth. But I think in this particular case, I think we need to look at plant species a little bit more specifically for the purpose of density of branches, of leaves, whatever the case may be, as well as year-round type use. So if that's the case, if I'm kind of getting the feel that the board may like that, when we look at our buffer yards, we may not specifically say your ordinance says this, do this, right? I think we want the liberty to maybe a little bit more flexible on our plant vegetation selection for the purpose of screening. Obviously, with a denser type plant material, it would keep our dust, if there is any residual dust on property. So if it's okay, I'd like to maybe walk down that path a little bit further.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Particularly to the west.
Correct.
The higher you can make that with the mountain and trees.
Right.
Well, and those are minimums really in our ordinance. So if you exceed our minimums, then that is a good thing. Yeah. We would definitely allow you to do that.
Jeff, do we need a vote on a continuance?
Yes, sir, we do. The board would need to do that.
Okay, I'm gonna move that we continue 2023-02 based on the questions we've requested. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jen. All those in favor of continuing 2023-02, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Thank you.
One question.
We're just asking for a little homework.
Well, no additional notice.
No,
No.
you continue, you're good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. I just,
Yeah, thank you.
I've been from that in the past.
Yep.
I just wanna make
No,
sure-
we're not here to burn you. Okay, let's take just a 5-minute break. We've got some housekeeping things to tie up there. Meeting afterwards.
Can we read?
Thank you, everybody.
I'm down to 3%.
I'm off.
I'm off to 0. so.
Yeah, it's got HPC.
Okay, could call the meeting back to order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Whose iPad is dead? I just want to make sure if anybody.
Who planned this?
It's her fault. She unplugged the charger.
Way to go, Marissa.
I think you did.
Where's the charger?
There's a charger, but it was
It's
hard
a
to
big
plug when I
difference.
plugged my computer in. Blame Scott. Right,
Sure.
He's not here.
I still have 3%.
Listen.
I even turned my brightness all the way down.
Yeah,
So did I.
I went
Well, I'm
zero
at
about
one.
7:40.
Mine's gonna go.
Yeah, you're next.
I have one, but.
We got the big screen.
Yeah, we can go. with that.
Yeah, we can see it.
So let's go to amendments, Excel. I only have 5.
Wow.
Look at me go. That was a great meeting. Good job, everyone. Great questions. Super excited.
Yeah, that seems
The
like a good
hospital.
idea.
We need that.
The
Pediatric,
Yeah.
doctor,
Yeah.
pediatric doctor, pediatric doctor.
I lost my
I just want a
doctor.
doctor that's
Yes.
closer than the one I had.
I
in
know.
Place.
I'm not trying to go to the Starbucks. I feel sick.
All right, folks. So, first one we have here is the multifamily development process. So remember, I wanted to, I made an oversight on an amendment to add multifamily to our, or to exclude multifamily from the site plan development process. So I would like to revert back to the original language that this includes that, because that would not come before the board to have primary or secondary platting because it does not get platted.
So if a property develops as multifamily, we don't get any right of way dedication?
Okay, we do.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that's part of site plan.
okay.
Yeah, the site plan has the right of way dedication ordinance.
Okay.
Now, how much is based on that thoroughfare?
Yeah.
So we can't exceed that unless we do it in the rezone phase. So good on that one? Okay,
Yep.
cool. Definitions for dwelling, we have a little bit of some confusion here, so if you can, read the, multifamily is fine, but single family and two family. So we define two family as, a duplex essentially, that's on one parcel that has 2 units, whether it's above and below or side to side. But single family as a dwelling unit that is not attached in any way and on its own parcel. But if you look at something like Kendall Point that shares a party wall, those are 2 family houses that are each on their own separate parcel. So it's a little confusing, I think.
It's single family attached is what that should be called.
So should we change this to single family, like one of these definitions to single family attached, or make a different definition for that? Because I know that's a popular, like.
Yeah, I think we ought to
But
look
then-
at maybe some
Like
nearby
additional-
communities to see how they're splitting these up.
But then if we do we need to go through and see wherever that's referenced throughout the UDO then?
To make sure.
it's
it's correct.
you
Yeah,
know,
so then I think that would be a good designation to have a dwelling, single family detached, and then dwelling, single family attached.
Yeah.
Right?
Do we
Okay.
need them
Could you-
separate for any reason?
Well, I think it would just work better to have that as far as when it comes to the rezoning, as far as the parcel size required for each one.
Well, I mean, you could have a townhome with 5 or 6 units all attached in a building, but they're individually owned.
And
That's also single family attached.
And that sounds more like a condo,
Well,
right? You're talking about just the home structure?
yeah, but on a townhome, you own the front yard, your building, and the rear yard. In a condo, you usually only own inside the walls.
Okay,
So it is different.
okay,
And
I
there's an HOA instead of a condo associate. So there's nuances.
right. Well, this is just a kind of something I noticed. We don't have to change anything. It was just an inconsistency. that-
So do we have something in our UDO that defines what we have at Pendle Point that fits?
No, not that I'm aware of. When we did our zoning transition from the old code to the new code, it just got the closest via parcel size, I think was how the calculation was done.
I mean, attached duplexes owned by different people is fairly common, so I feel like our UDO should address it in some fashion.
So do you want me to kind of like look at some definitions for single family attached or
Yeah, that's good.
something? Yeah, okay, I will
It's
look
too
that up
muddy.
then.
It's too muddy.
All right, so I will come back with a,
Well, like you said, if you have a single family requires primary, secondary plating.
right,
So duplexes, townhomes would go through that process.
right, and so it's confusing if you had something like Pendle Point, how would you have that come through? What would you zone it? Because it's an attached structure, so it wouldn't technically.
When if it's on one lot, then how do you apply the minimum lot size?
That's a good question. I don't know when Pendle Point was built, but okay, so I will look at attached single family. If there's kind of any other ones to clear up that muddiness that we want to add as well, just shoot me an email if you think of something after this. Okay. A definition for EFS. I know we changed that exterior prohibited materials last month from Drive It because that was just the product brand name, not the actual product itself. So I'd like to add that as a definition. Tim, is that right? Like I just Googled it and came up with the first one, so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so any issues with that one? Nope, okay, we'll add that as a definition. This was something that actually kind of, I think, helped tonight, and also we want to make sure that with the next meeting, those commitments, we add the clawback clause, since I don't think this board has done that before. You might want to research the best way to approach that with this next meeting. So our site plans, as they sit, they just go to the planning department. They obviously have done the right zoning and or variances that they might require. But staff can refer site plans to the planning commission at any point in time. Might be a really contentious project. It might be something where the staff is just more comfortable with the board making a decision on something. However, we don't have that ability with secondary plats. We have to completely disapprove it or you have to deny it first and then they have to file an appeal. So I would like to streamline that process and the staff feels the need to bring a secondary plat before the board being able to do that. And you don't have to notice for either of these processes.
I would appreciate that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I will update that. I'm just copying and pasting the site development language about at any time staff can refer to or approval.
And feel free to do that.
Will do.
We'll take the heat.
And then the last thing I have is the Indiana code reference number for condos has been updated from 32.1-6 to 32.5. Those are exempt by Indiana. They're an exempt subdivision. There's something every day. All right, I got nothing else. You got anything else for me?
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Mostly education.
Sure.
So one is on like a variance requirement that goes to BZA, like we were talking about those towns.
Sure.
So we can give recommendations to the town council when they're getting ready to file something that we approve, right?
Correct.
Can we give a recommendation on the height of those towers? Or is that not our purview?
Sure,
Yeah, you
We can.
absolutely can. Yeah.
We can put all
And
those
they're-
requirements on there.
If
They
they-
can change it or vote them down or
Well, you can even require a lower height if you want.
or require lower height.
I mean, they're by right with straight zoning, they could do 55 feet.
Right, and then all those approvals are kind of contingent that they all get approved, so it's like the rezone would be null and void, I guess, if the zoning did, or variance is not.
So we couldn't approve it until the variance is approved or vice versa?
It would be contingent, and Jeff, if I'm saying this wrong, let me know, but it would be, the approval would be contingent upon the BZA approving it, so I believe town council would have that.
That's right.
Is that correct? Okay.
Thank you. My second question is I missed last month and I saw the minutes about the consultant recommendation. Any follow-up for us about that or a
No,
search
no,
or
we
whatever?
haven't moved on it.
I had a thought on that.
Mhm.
You think would be better, maybe bring in a couple of developers, like a Eaton Law or a Simon or someone, say, hey, what do you think? Go out there. Consultants get a little,
Do we have to pay developers to come
no.
in?
No, I think they come running. I mean, they jump,
What would you want to build? Yeah.
yeah, what do you think would go here if you were
Yeah,
to do this?
looking
You
in the
get Eaton
future.
Law,
Yeah.
Bradley, there's some,
Yeah, because consultants tend to want to just like give you a
we're
lot
gonna
of,
tell you what you want to hear.
Mhm. And then make it a really thick book.
True.
We
I would just want
A lot
us
of
to
pages.
parse through competing priorities between a developer and a consultant. I hear what you're saying about a consultant. I just would like a thorough view, whoever brings it, or bring both.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think a developer would give you a pretty honest opinion because they're the ones gonna spend the money.
That's a
Lot
good
of money.
point. Yeah.
A lot of money.
I'm just wondering about, how do you go about attracting what it is you decided that you want?
I would say that would be a mechanism of the town basically going out and coaching development in a
Right.
way. We would have to probably with this board, RDC and town council establish possibly an incentives style package with
that's
TIF
what I was
funds
wondering
of some
too.
sort.
Right.
To kind of go out and be like, this is what we're looking for. Here's what we have. Do you want to come build?
Scott Russell made a comment at the last thing I was at, that if you do your comp plan correctly, they will come. I think there's probably, and I believe he knows more than I do. I think there is probably in that area a little more to it. I agree with incentives or whatever.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So,
And it's, the whole Keystone district is a little bit of a chicken and an egg, in case you haven't noticed. It's like, do we build the stuff that's real nice around it first? And then this nice big Keystone will come, or do we have to build this and the good stuff will build around it because they want to come near, be near this Keystone? So it's,
And we need to be really
Usually the people
careful.
come, didn't stuff.
We need to be really careful about the don't want to interrupt the downtown versus what we're doing out there.
Right.
We're gonna stifle ourselves, I think, if we're not really mindful of that being our selling point.
right. And I think the way I've interpreted the I-69 plan is that while that will have it will have, you know, bars, restaurant, living, a Google headquarters maybe. It'll have a distinctively different feel, and it's supposed to, than what we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
down
we
here.
get it. Yeah.
And there's also other things the town has been looking at doing and improving the amount of businesses we can have down here. I think we might have discussed mildly a riverfront district last month, maybe Brad, you brought it up. That requires people to fix up their buildings to get a liquor license, and that in and of itself is a huge incentive package.
Right, which is really different, right? Just like you're saying for both areas.
Yes,
We
they're
need both
completely-
simultaneously. I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're completely different
Okay.
vibes, if you will.
Thank you.
And they're both unique in and of that right. So, looking for that good balance where no, it does not kill the downtown, but we also need to have a good, and this is something probably RDC could help with, is updating that downtown revitalization plan. And because I think that riverfront district might be in there. But making sure that we have that something solidly down here so that it doesn't die. We need more life down here, right? So how do you do that?
Have accountability. We need to continue to have accountability because people who are trying to rent buildings don't always want to rent what's open.
Okay.
And that goes back to having buildings that just by aesthetics alone aren't always pleasing. And so people go elsewhere. They don't want to spend all their personal money doing the inside build out because, you know, they have to put in a whole new restroom.
Or
They have to read,
facade update.
yeah, they have to redo everything. So they're looking for something. We saw it with the lumber. They did a great job building that out.
Mhm.
And they have a
That's
waiting
cool.
list. So to me, we have to keep people who own commercial properties accountable.
Yeah.
It goes back to health, safety and welfare, and then the economic drive.
Right. No, I totally agree.
Airbnb, VRBOs,
What about?
are they approved, not approved, permitted? Need a
Short-term
permit?
rentals are permitted in certain zones by right and others they're conditional. Regardless, they have to be registered. There's, I think, a annual fee of some sort. But we do have a tracking system as such.
I was asked that question there.
Yep. It's a short-term
zone-
rental
what-
registration form.
What zone is approved, not approved?
I have to look at the book,
What constitutes a short-term rental?
less
What?
than 30 days.
Well, a lot of Airbnbs are being used now for travel nurses and they book those more than 30 days. But it's still under Airbnb.
That I don't know.
They want a home and not a hotel room.
Hotel,
And
yeah.
then that's more lucrative to the people who have that Airbnb home. Sure, I know I have
Yeah.
a 90-day contract with this traveling nurse.
I think it's
90
90
day
days.
frequency and availability to rent. So you're not going to rent a house that is meant to be leased for 6 months by the day. I think it has to do with the frequency that it could be rented, like the revolve of customer versus the actual length of stay. I think, I'm not.
I know it,
100%
I
sure.
know it's 30 days. It does mention consecutive
Yeah, there's consecutive component there.
component, yes, to it.
Jeff, do we need to vote on these changes to the UDO? Please make,
We do, yeah, to pass them on to the council for possible adoption.
do I have a motion to accept the changes we made to the UDO as noted,
We're doing everything except the dwelling definitions.
accept the dwelling definition?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Carol. Have a second? Second. All those in favor of making the changes to the UDO as noted, accept the dwelling definitions, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Any questions or comments? Meetings are, thank you, folks.